Hello, all my lovely coloring friends. Today I'm here to do a review of the Tim Holtz Distress Watercolor Pencils. I received these, well, I ordered them the day after the Tim Holtz Live where he introduced them. Deb Eilbeck, you'll know her from Instagram and from here. She comments a lot. She doesn't have a YouTube channel, but she's very much a person on YouTube. So she had told me about them and I watched the live and I decided to go ahead and get them. They are watercolor pencils in the Distress palette of colors. They are solid pigment, so there's no wood on the outside. They're woodless pencils. I'm just going to open a package so you can see. I will, on the thumbnails, leave a picture of what the packages actually look like because mine have been open, played with. I have a lot of opinions on these, and we're going to do a lot of stuff today to check out how they work. They come with this thick acetate inside of them, and I wound up using it as a palette. I'm sorry for all the glare, but I don't know if you can see. I've left some of it on. I'm not worried about it. But yeah, they look like this. Get one out for you. And I've seen Wendy at Happily Handmade Delights did a first impression on these. And I've seen a lot of makers show impressions of these, but not a lot of colorists. So these are about 5 inches long, and they're about a ½ inch or a quarter inch in diameter. They're like basically like the size of a pencil, except shorter. So they're supposed to work like watercolor pencils. I do want to stress that in Tim Holtz's live video, he did talk about they're made for makers. They're not really for colorists, but we're colorists and there's a new palette of colors out. So of course we're going to want to look into it and see what they are. So that's what we're going to do today. To start, move these out of the way. I'm going to show a swatch of the palette. I decided not to do this on camera because there's some other stuff I'd much rather do on camera. So I'm going to move you down as slowly as possible. So if it's upsetting for your eyes, turn away for a moment. And now we're just going to go ahead and look at these swatches. And I set up the swatches and I put water on them. So I do not have a swatch of the true color, but I will shortly. So each set is designed to be able to be used individually. So you have a complete array of colors in all 3 sets, as opposed to getting like a light set and a dark set and a neutral set, which is nice because if you don't want to spend the money to get all 3 sets right away, one set will do you for quite a while. At the time of purchase, these were $20 a piece. Last night when I looked them up, they were at $22. So set 1, if you know your distress colors, we've got picked raspberry, fired brick, rusty hinge, mustard seed, peeled paint, salvaged patina, speckled egg, salty ocean, villainous potion, walnut stain, black soot, and picket fence. So we have a nice mix of the newer distress colors and the older distress colors. Set 2 is kitsch flamingo, barn door, spiced marmalade, fossilized amber, twisted citron, cracked pistachio, mermaid lagoon, iced spruce, prize ribbon, seedless preserve, antique linen, and vintage photo. Set 3 comes with tattered rose, candied apple, crackling campfire, wild honey, crushed olive, rustic wilderness, peacock feathers, tumbled glass, faded jeans, shaded lilac, frayed burlap, and hickory smoke. So it is, like I said, a good mix of colors along all 3 sets, and in each set individually you get enough colors to do something to try them out if you only wanted to purchase one. So they are, like I said, 5 inches and a quarter inch in diameter. They come in a lovely tin box, which looks like a lot of the Distress line, you know, with the acetate window and the metal. I'm not sure if this is meant to be used as a palette, but like I said, I've been using it as a palette. And then you've got 12 crayons or 12 pencils in each set. All the pencils have a sticker label on them that is like a wood grain design, has the name. I'm hoping this is coming into frame and focus. Has the name clearly written out on it, and it says Distress Watercolor Pencil. So that's the basic logistics of these pencils. And on the back of each set, you have the set number and the colors within the set. I've also done the colors on black paper because they have some opacity to them. So I wanted to show them as best I can on black paper as well. Like I stated at the beginning, these are made for makers, not colorists. So the things that I'm looking for as a colorist are different than what I would look for as a maker. This is something I'd care about more as a maker than a colorist. It's not often we have a black background, but this shows me that they would look good like on acrylic paints or on books that have a black background, specifically like Maria Trolle or any kind of Amazon printed book with a black background already built in. So you can actually get some use out of them on those as well if you wanted to add your own details. So next I did a chart showing a comparison between the color as the watercolor pencil, the color as the distress crayon, and if I have it, the color as the ink pad. I have more distress crayons and more ink pads, but they're not all in these colors. So it was a little fun to just go through all three collections to see what I had that matched up. So if it has the leaf, that's the ink pad. The second line in each one is always the crayon, and the first line is always the distress pencil, since that's what we're focusing on today. So I noticed some things while doing this, which I'm going to actually go ahead and turn on the light now that I have the tops of the boxes not showing. So this is more true to life. What I noticed was that a lot of the colors, I thought I bought this set because they would match, and they do match, like they're still within the same color family, but a lot of the things are darker as the crayons and mid-ranged with the inks and then lighter with the pencils. I feel like the pencils show less of the true color. If we were to pick the ink as the true color, then it's less than the true color. So it's a little bit lighter. So going over the inks might not be the easiest thing because they're not really going to show up as much. But you could certainly add the ink to the backgrounds or whatever as you were doing them. So that is what I figured out, and I'm going to leave this on the screen for you to just look at for a few moments or to screenshot it if you want to, because it is like a good idea of what the crayons, pencils, and ink pads do together. So I received these last Friday. Today it is Wednesday. I had done both of these swatch charts right off the bat because I knew I wanted to share these with you. And I wanted to have enough information to fairly do a review because I didn't want to come in and just be like, I got new pencils, yay. You know, I wanted to share them in the best way possible. So that's why I made all these charts. These are not charts that are going into my swatch book. These are just for you. This one will be going into my swatch book. So after I had made the swatches and oohed and awed over the beautiful cases my pencils came in, I decided to go ahead and try to start a page. And I had done one in my Jane Austen book because this book has become a book that I wish to finish, but also a book where I just try out new stuff. And I forgot that this book is not a huge fan of water. You know, unless I lay down a medium like gesso or liquid satin or satin glazing liquid or watercolor grounds. But this is what had happened with this picture. It is not terrible, but this was a first attempt. I attempted some splatter with the shaded lilac, and I attempted to just color this in with the crayons to the paper. And then I wound up coming back, dipping my water brush onto my crayon or pencil and pulling it out that way. So that was my first attempt. It was not great. This paper does not want to move any kind of water medium. So not a good descriptor for everybody, but I wanted to show you that it is not going to work on all papers. And the next thing I had done was print off this picture on my printer. I have a laser jet printer, right? I think that's what they are, the ones that use toner. And I always get them confused, but I had printed this off. I let it dry, and this is on my Hewlett-Packard, it's an HP 32 paper. So it's, you know, pretty hefty. It's very smooth. It's good for markers and things. And I did this without any kind of medium on top. No gesso, no anything. Just straight paper, pencils to the paper. And what I had found was they're still a little hard for me to blend. So you can see, like, the blending is not the greatest, especially around this heart, the purple into the darker blue, which I think was, it was the Villainous Potion, and then I tried to go straight into, what? Prize Ribbon, which I'll show you. So it's this purple into that blue, and it wasn't really having a good time of it. As you can see up in here, I tried to pull really hard. And then I decided what I need to do is try it out on the 3 mediums I was just talking about, which was the gesso, satin glazing liquid, and Daniel Smith watercolor grounds. So again, I used my Hewlett Packard 32 HP 32 paper, and I wrote at the top, so I did not forget what was what, but the white gesso, the satin glazing liquid, and the Daniel Smith watercolor ground. I took pencil to the paper, added it, and then tried to watercolor it out. And the smoothest way seems to have been the gesso. It was also the best for the pigment compared to the other two. So, we're in there. Okay, I'm sorry. The sun is shining directly into my room, and I'm having a little trouble seeing because I did not set up a monitor yet. I'm still standing. So what I had decided with the gesso is that I was going to go ahead and try that in a coloring book. So I'd like to show you that and spend some time with all of us working on that when you can watch me do it in real time. What I had also done is I was discovering that for coloring, I was getting the best amount of pigment by taking my watercolor or my water brush to the actual pencil and then painting onto my page, as opposed to laying the pencil down and then smoothing it out with water. So I shaved one of my crayons, I sharpened, and I created a watercolor pan for it and put the shavings into it, added a little bit of water, and it dried up really nicely. This one is seedless preserves, and I thought we could do one here on camera so that you can understand what I did in case you don't know about doing that. And then I will show also using that as a watercolor in the books, from water brush on this palette to that book, because that's another way that we can use these inks. Just to go over the way these pencils can be used, they can be used dry. Apply the pencil. Let me just grab a book for reference. We're not going to work on this page, but I've just got it open now. So you can take your pencil and apply your color directly to the page, and then use watercolor. You can apply the pencil and not use watercolor. You can take a watercolor brush, use your watercolor brush to get color off your pencil and add it to your page that way. You can also use it from a palette like I've just shown you, where we've made it into a watercolor, and you can use it from a rough surface cutting board or the Caran d'Ache palette and apply it that way with a water brush. That's all the ways that I've tried them so far. So what I thought we would do today is take some time to color in Matchstick Mouse. I did, I should have put bookmarks in these, but of course I did not. I put white gesso, because I did not realize it wasn't my clear, in a page in here, which is right here, and it's very hard to see because it is covered in white gesso. I covered it, I let it dry, and then I used a sanding block to sand it down so that it was smooth again. And then I also picked out, this page, which has nothing on it, because when I did my How I Neocolor, it's not in this book, but there's other pages I've neocolored in here. I did it purposely on the paper itself with no prep work on the paper. There's one that's all Neocolor 2s, and there's nothing on the paper to protect it. It's just as is with minimal bleed through. I like to try new mediums in an Amazon printed book because we have so many of them, and trying it in a book that's like the best for the book, you know, the medium will work the best in that book, isn't necessarily the best thing to me, because yeah, it looks great and it's perfect. But if a lot of your book collection, like me, is Amazon printed books because some cute things come out on this paper, to me, the best thing to show new mediums on is this paper so that you can see it can work on what is arguably the worst paper we have in our collections, and we can still get a decent finished product from it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make the little watercolor palette if you'd like to try that on your own if you have these. And it works for Neocolor 2s as well. And then I'm going to show a little comparison of these watercolor pencils with standard normal watercolor pencils and also with a Neocolor 2, so you can see the difference in vibrancy and lay down and how well you can blend out your lines. And then we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of coloring on the gessoed page and the non-gessoed page to get a feel for what works. So just give me a moment and I'll set up and we'll get started on the fun stuff. You can buy watercolor cases on Amazon along with the little pans that go inside of them. And then I am just using rectangular labels. And let me just grab a full sheet or a fuller sheet so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm at the end of this one, so it's just I cut them in half and I take the little label and then I apply it to the side of the pan so that I know which colors I'm dealing with inside this pan. So I'm going to remove this. I need to get a little bit of water and we will sharpen this and I'll show you what it looks like after it starts to get creamy and when it looks like when it starts to dry, because it did not take long. I just left it sitting out on my desk overnight. I came back and it was dry. And at the cost of these, at $20 for 12, I'm going to be very particular about being able to use up every last little bit of it. Because they are rather expensive. I will add price points for Neocolor 2s and price points for Albrecht Dürer watercolors on screen when I edit, because the comparison of cost per unit, cost per piece, is these come out very expensive compared to those. So I want to give you all of the information I can so you could decide what you would like to spend your money on, what would be best for you. So I have a little toothpick, I have my water, I have a little pipette, and I wouldn't suggest just shaving these to make these palettes. I'm doing this for you. I would normally, if it wasn't for a video, wait until these are dull or too short for me to comfortably color with, and then I would attempt to make these. But I wanted to know if we could, first off, and then I wanted to know how they worked. So I've done 4 drops of water, and then I'm just going to take my toothpick and start mixing it up. You can always add more water if it's needed, but you can't really get it back out. You just have to add more pigment from your pencil. So I start very lightly. I feel like this is still all breaking down. It just takes a minute because you don't want any lumps. So it's like a little coloring cake, I guess. Get the lumps out. So I'm adding 2 more drops and pulling everything down from the side. So I didn't want to break this into too many videos, and I didn't want to do one where I did a first impressions and then I did a coloring and then I had an opinion. I wanted to wait and really get a feel for them and decide how I really feel. And I'm honestly not giving you my opinion at this time because I want you to see everything for yourself and then kind of talk about how I feel about them and how you might feel about them and do a little pros and cons list as well. So yeah, once the little watercolor palette is done, I slip it into here. And yeah, there's not a lot of color in either of these right now, but that's not the point, is to get myself a full watercolor palette. The point is to be able to utilize every single drop of these pencils. So you can see this is one is wet, this one is super dry, and it's ready to go. We are going to use that on one of our coloring pages today. I do feel like these pencils are an in-between a watercolor pencil and a Neocolor 2. I think the distressed crayons are more like a gelato then a Neocolor 2. So I'm adding this to this pile. It may not be the best. And I do want to reiterate, because I know I will be upsetting people by saying, are they for colorists? But they were said to not be for colorists anyway. So this is really, we need to decide if these work for us or not. So that was the Kohinoor Mondeluz, and I did it in a red. I'm trying to not necessarily match my colors, but at least have something that looks comparable on screen. And that was a Neocolor 2. And then I'm going to pull out the Candied Apple Distressed Watercolor Pencil and use that as well. So if you're listening, you can hear some of that scratchiness you don't hear on the Neocolor, which you wouldn't. But these are supposedly all pigment, no binder of any kind. And then the colored pencil, of course, you could hear the scratchies because it's a pencil. And this is also a pencil, so that's fair. So I'm just going to take my brush, get it wet, and come in, and I will pull the Mondeluz watercolor pencil down. I would use the Albrecht Dürer because that's what I did my price checking with, but I do not actually own those at this time, so I don't have them to compare. They are my Hope and Dream watercolor pencils for right now. I will get them eventually. And then this is the Neocolor 2, blending it out with water. So as you can see, the color payout is slightly better than it is with the pencil, but those are good pencils. And then we will do the Distress colored pencil and pull that out so you can see that as well. And that's the color payout on that. So that's an idea of what they look like, because they are things that work similarly as each other. So that's why I did this. So I'm going to set up for coloring, and we're going to go ahead and try these pencils. I'm going to take these little plastic palettes out of each and get these open and on my desk so that I'm not fiddling with them during the coloring. And we're going to try and see what we can accomplish on a non-prepped page and what we can accomplish on a prepped page. So this video will be a little long. I'll try to put chapters in it if I can remember when I'm editing. And then that way you can skip around if you want to not worry about all the parts that I'm going to talk about. And like I said, we will be using the dry watercolor that I had made at some point in the video. And there is one other point I want to touch on with these pencils. I wrote myself instructions as to what I wanted to talk about, and then as I get into it, I get a little excited and I forget to follow my own instructions. So excuse the noise, I'm moving in my chair. I'm going to get one pencil. I'm going to pick a darker color so that it's easily visible. So we've got the Mermaid Lagoon. So we're just going to work on this piece of paper, and I'm going to show you, this is the pencil with a flat lay down. They are fairly crumbly. I am using some firm pressure. If I do not use firm pressure, I have this. The nice things about these is that you can remove these sticker wrappers, and we could possibly do them long ways and get a better amount of color out at one time to do backgrounds or something larger. So that is what it looks like flat. So I can show you when we add water to it. Oops, a little bit dry there. This is what the color turns into, and we can do it with the lighter one too. And with this large one, if I get a little more water, so you can see how they work as themselves. Then what you can do as another option for how they work is you can take your brush to the crayon itself and get color. That is with my water brush being wet. This is with a slightly drier brush, and you can get the color out that way. I've had not a lot of success in coloring books unless I'm using it for small spaces as shading as of this time. I mean, maybe I will get better at it, or maybe that's the capacity of the pencil. I am not entirely sure. I don't suggest putting these back in the box after you've wet them, so just leave them out to dry somewhere and then put them away. And then we have using the palette that we made with a water pen or a paintbrush and collecting some of the ink or the pencil from inside of there and using that, let me just move us over a little, as your color. So another way to use it. I'm sure people are going to find more ways, but this is what I found in the limited amount of time that I've had since I've gotten them to figure it out. So I'm going to remove this paper and we're going to go ahead into our book. And as I stated before, I like doing things on Amazon printed paper because that is what a lot of us have. And I think it's important to show the possibilities with the worst paper in our collection, arguably, and then figure out how to do things that work better for us. So I made a watercolor of the seedless preserves, and I'm going to go ahead and start Matchstick Mouse's hat with the picked raspberry. I'm going to go pencil to paper right off the bat and get her all colored in. And I want to show a couple of different ways of getting things onto the paper. I've had good success using the Neocolor 2s in this book particularly, or in these books particularly. And in the comments below, if you're still here and watching, let me know if you would like to see more where I do reviews on coloring mediums that I use, and if you think that doing them on Amazon paper is a good or bad idea and why not, because I do feel like we all have these books. But if you'd like to see it on Amazon paper and then on a better paper, we could do that as well. So just let me know in the comments if any of this is interesting to you. I'm doing this one as a review because it is so new, and I really wanted to decide how I felt about these and if I like them. So that was the picked raspberry down on the paper, and I tried to color with these without using water, and I don't really care for the lay down of them dry. That is my opinion. You might have a different one. So I'm going to go in. Oh, let me add, I wanted to add the seedless preserves as well as some shading as soon as I can find it. Sorry for my slowness. The palettes are still new, so I'm not entirely sure what's in which palette. So I've got the seedless preserves, and I'm just going to use this in the darker areas on top of what we've already laid down to give us a little bit of shading. I've always been told with water mediums to go from light to dark when I go to do them, color or use the water on them. So I'm going to get all my areas first. Okay, that feels good to me. A little bit right there. We could be here all day if I just start trying to figure out where to play. So start in my light areas, which would be my centers. And then I don't want to let this dry until it's cleaned up. And I know I just went over her little, every time I see them, I think of them as like Band-Aids. They're stitches, I guess, in her hat. I don't want to ignore those or go over them, but I already did. And it's not a big deal because I can change them up later on. So yeah, I'm taking my color from the center and blending it out, and then going to my shadows and just pulling them out to even them out a little bit. I'm going to get fresh water so I can kind of feather that so it's not just a big line, you know, where I was. And I hope this is visible enough for you. I'm afraid to pull any further in, honestly, just because if I move, I'm going to wind up instantly out of frame. So I'm going to come around this side and do the same thing. I've done my lights, and now I'm going into my darks. And that's what we've got so far. And you'll notice I'm hardly using any water because it's Amazon printed paper. So I'm just going around and making sure we're smooth. And I feel pretty good about that. It's smooth enough. What I don't feel is that we got enough of a shadow. I don't feel like when they're together, I don't feel like I get a good enough blend to get a decent shadow. I did forget to put a paper under there, but as you can see, I hardly have any bleed through. Just this one little spot, and nothing's going through the other side. But I am going to put a piece of paper in there if I can lean over without falling out of this chair. I'll grab a piece of printer paper and get it under there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do her little ears with the Tattered Rose while that's drying, because I'm going to come back in because we made the Seedless Preserve watercolor palette. So I want to use that to come in and see what... Okay, the other ear's facing out. So she only has the one pink ear. We'll do her little nose and her hands at the same time while we're waiting. And then I'll be able to activate these later so I can finish this page. But it gives me something to do and we're not just seeing some color lay down dry. Because I don't want to shut off and come back. I don't know if I'll come back. It's one of those days, folks. So yeah, this feels dry enough now. So I'm going to grab the watercolor palette we made, which was here again. And I'm just going to take a smaller brush, move us over just a smidge, and utilize this Seedless Preserves in a more concentrated form. A little more water. And get in here and make this a little bit darker. And this as well. And this is where I was saying earlier that using the paintbrush to the pencil seems to be ideal for finishing up this type of bit to the picture. But once you start sharpening, you can just use these little palettes. A little more water. And I'm cleaning up the edges of the palette because some of it got out while I'm doing this. I'm just going to come in here and add a little more up through here. But like I said, I want to feather it out as well. I don't want it to look like just a block of color. I'm not going to worry about those right now. But that's what they look like on regular Amazon printed paper with no medium underneath. And like I said, at the end of this, I will be doing like a pros and cons list, what I've seen as good and bad. So stay tuned for that. I'm just going to finish feathering this out. And that is Matchstick Mouse's hat on non-prepared paper. This is just straight from the coloring book as is. So I hope that is something that you can see well. And you can make a choice based on that. And this is the laydown of the dry pencils. So moving on, I'm going to let that dry and I'll come back and we'll do a little bit of work on the page that I've pre-gessoed, which is here. So now we're on to my heavily gessoed page, which is going to be a joy to color. It's all my fault, so it's fine. And I'm going to go ahead with the hat again, because the hat is just something easy we can see and work on. So I'm going to go ahead with a tealy color this time, because I do like to change our hat in almost every video, or every page I color. And I'm going to go with the Salvaged Patina as my light color. And the crayons go on very smooth, or the pencils. I am so sorry I keep calling them crayons. I have a distress crayon video coming out soon after this, maybe next week. I don't know. It's another long one. But Sherry had asked, a friend of ours here on the channel, had asked us if we could show how I use distress crayons. So I'm going to do that video as well, because she just received a pack as a present and wants to use them. So that is something we're going to do next. I hope you stick with this, because I think right now that the page is so heavily gessoed you can't really see the image. And then on top of that, I'm using a very light color. So I hope you just hang out with me for a few while we get this part going. I'm going to use Peacock Feathers as my dark color. Oh, I used cracked pistachio by accident instead of salvaged patina. So we're going to be going with that. I've got cracked pistachio, which is super, super light. And I'm still going to use Peacock Feathers because I don't care. And it's my page and we can do whatever we want. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let me get it out of the box. Okay, this one is Peacock Feathers. And same thing, I'm just going to go along the edges of everything that needs to be dark and get that in there. And I'm not worried about light sources, I'm just worried about giving this hat a little bit of life. So I'm going to come up here a little bit. And then we're going to go behind that and get a little more color up in here. Alright, so there's my colors. And get a little bit of that off. I forgot my brush. So give it a little blow. And then I'm going to go ahead and go in, and again, starting with my lightest colors, working my way into the dark. I'm trying to be very careful. And they are smoothing out nicely on this paper with the gesso on it. And I'm just going to pull some of my dark over into my light and feather it out. There we go. And this part is just going to be dark. Get it in there. And then up here, I'm starting into the dark because I didn't realize how much I had added. So I want to spread it around a little, and then I'll be able to throw it back into its corner with the light. So that's been all activated, and now we're going to activate the rest of it. Just kind of get it spread out nice. So there's her hat, and I'm going to be adding like darkness with the lines and get them all brought in that I want in. All the lines I want to be in will be in. But that's what her hat looks like on the gessoed paper. So I do like it on the gesso, and I do like it on the non-prepared paper. The non-prepared paper, though, will leave bleed through, and it will also cause the page to buckle if you're not very careful. Like right now we have no buckling. But if you're not very careful about the amount of water you use, you have to use it sparingly, it will start to buckle. This page is soft, will not buckle, and bleed through should be very minimal. Which, I mean, I know it doesn't really matter because this is a single-sided book, but it's important to know for later if you go to use these in a non-single-sided book. So, again, I'm just going to pull up our color chart that we made of all the colors of the... There we go. I'll do these side by side. I'm going to pull you up now. There we go. And we have two color charts. One which is the colors of the pencils themselves, and one which is the pencils, the crayons, and the inks. So there we go. I'm sorry, the sun is starting to come out and it's really messing with the filming, but I want to finish now that I am so close. So I'm just going to leave these here while we talk about the pros and cons so that there's something on the screen. So, based on me playing with these for a little less than a week from Friday to Wednesday, I have found that there are a pro is multiple ways to activate. Again, we've got pencil to paper. We have brush to pencil to paper. We have shavings into a watercolor, into a palette, and then getting them from there with a brush. And we have activating them with water or leaving them dry on the page. So there's quite a lot of ways that you can activate or use these. Another pro is that when you use the shavings, you are saving the waste. So it's minimal waste and you get to keep more of the pigment. That leads to another pro, which is that these are woodless. So they're all pigment, which is nice because you can use them for a much longer period of time. So at the price point that they were when I bought them, which was $20 for 12, it feels like a lot, but all of it is usable except that sticker. Even the storage containers, when the crayons are gone or pencils are gone, you can reuse them for something else if you wanted to. Which leads to the next pro, that they come in their own storage containers so that you're not looking for a way to house these. Like when we buy watercolor pencils, we tend to put them into the pencil holders as opposed to leaving them in the tins so that we can stand them up or store them any way we want. These can stand up and stay closed. These can lay down and stay closed. And they have a very small footprint. So even if you were to stack them, let's see, let's get a measurement for you. Even if we stack them all three cases together, if you have shallow drawers, which I do because I have a map chest, and then has all shallow drawers. Where's my ruler? These all stacked together still only have a height of 1 3/4 inches. So there's multiple ways those could be put away and not seem to take up your whole room. The other pro is that they stay within the color family of each of the distressed ink or distressed mediums lines. Some are, yes, lighter than others and darker than others, but they are within the same color family, so they're really nice. We can use them. So that is another pro. The con is the price. Like, you can get a really decent set of watercolor pencils and still have money left for the price of what you're paying for these pencils. I don't feel like they work well as pencils without activation, so for me that's a con. And I feel like in order to blend, it's more comfortable for me to use the paintbrush to the pencil to the paper to blend colors in than it is to blend the colors together dry and get them to blend nicely at the end. Another con that I would mention is I don't feel like they're for people with hand issues. I am having to press rather hard with them. So if you have a lot of difficulties with pain in your hands or not being able to like really apply pressure, these might not be for you. And that's the pros and cons. There's a neutral. The neutral is they were not made for us. They're made for people that are makers. So us using them is just us trying to find the best way for us to use them in our books. So that's basically the list of pros and cons. It's how I feel about them. I will be finishing the 2 pages that I started here on camera today. I am doing this as a review. I'm trying to show you all the bits I can show you. I'm not going to tell you that you need them or you don't need them. That's your call. I think for me, this video was just to ask the question, do these work for colorists? And you're going to have to answer that for yourself. But this is enough, I think, information to show you what is available with them. For me personally, I am glad that I have them and I will be using them. So that is the end of this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions and comments, please leave them below. Feel free to like and subscribe because I always like to have new friends and I love talking to all of you. So until next time, friends, have a very colorful day. Bye.